The Nintendo 3DS has been a polarizing system. It gave gamers a revolutionary new way to play. It was loved and criticized by Nintendo fans around the world at various points of its lifetime, and it's even been responsible for the late Nintendo president Satoru Iwata having to take a 50% pay cut. We're going to be looking at all of that and more in this retrospective, so strap in, remove your 3D glasses, and get ready. This is the history of Nintendo 3DS. It's the 15th of June 2010. The local time in Los Angeles, California is 9 AM. Nintendo are in town for E3 and about to show off their latest slate of games for the Wii, including Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. However, something else was brewing. Prior to this year's E3, Nintendo had confirmed they were working on a new piece of gaming hardware, and it would be shown off for the first time at this E3 stage show. The Nintendo 3DS era was about to begin. What the audience of industry members and journalists in LA's Nokia Theatre didn't realise was that this would be the last line of fully dedicated handheld systems Nintendo would ever produce. But more on that later. Former Nintendo of America president Reggie Fils-Aimé took to the stage and said,
"It was Super Mario 64 that first moved us into fully rendered game worlds. It was the Wii Remote that got us up off the couch and into a new world of game control. And today, as I mentioned at the outset, we're not just raising the bar, but we're making that bar extend far into the distance. 3D play on Nintendo 3DS is on the way."
This latest bit of tech from Nintendo had big shoes to fill, taking over and evolving from the super successful DS line of handhelds. The console would offer glasses-free 3D gaming experiences, a slide pad that would later become known as the Circle Pad, a 3D camera, Wi-Fi communications between systems, a motion and gyro sensor was also included. On stage, a new game in the Kid Icarus series was shown, the first since 1991's of Myths and Monsters on the Game Boy. Across the E3 event, players would get to see Star Fox 64 3D, Pilot Wings 3D, and Metal Gear Solid 3D. Things were looking promising. E3 came and went, and while gamers waited for the launch of the system, Nintendo was hard at work putting finishing touches to the handheld. But this wasn't the first experience Nintendo have had with 3D. The company had a history of combining 3D visuals and gaming, and in a time-honoured tradition, Nintendo's past was about to inform their future. First off, they had cut their teeth on the Famicom 3D system, released in 1987, a failed add-on to the Famicom that never released outside Japanese shores and only had 7 titles available. But fear not, they tried again in 1995 with the release of the Virtual Boy. This time Nintendo would release a dedicated 3D headset with an attached stand, ready to show the full glory of the third dimension, but only in red. Yes, the Virtual Boy was yet again an underwhelming failure for Nintendo in the 3D space. It was too expensive, uncomfortable physically, and caused eye strain with the red graphical color scheme. It's the lowest selling Nintendo console ever made, coming in with just 770,000 units sold worldwide. Yes, the Wii U can even laugh at this one. Nintendo seemed hell-bent on making 3D work. The newest Nintendo home console in 2001 was the GameCube, and it had internals capable of playing games in optical 3D. The original Luigi's Mansion could be played in the format, but would require a compatible glasses-free 3D screen. And even though the screen had been developed for the system, the idea was eventually scrapped, as the technology would cost too much to mass produce at the time. The Game Boy Advance SP released in 2003, and at one point during development, it was going to have a 3D screen. But again, the idea was scrapped due to the tech not being able to meet the required resolution to give a comfortable viewing experience. All of Nintendo's dabbling in the 3D space had brought us to the development of what would become the 3DS. In 2004, Nintendo Research and Engineering had a working chip model for the new handheld. Over the years, this was developed to make a more powerful system, one that had communication abilities for Streetpass, and could render better looking game graphics than the DS. In 2008, the idea of adding a 3D screen was suggested by the development team, and Mario creator and industry legend Shigeru Miyamoto loved the plan. During development, a prototype of the 3D screen was hooked up to a Wii console and able to play an optically 3D modded version of Mario Kart Wii. The test was a success, and the new Nintendo handheld was on its way to becoming a 3DS. And that brings us back to the pre-release time before the 3DS launched. On January 19, 2011, pre-launch events for the 3DS were held in Amsterdam and New York City. At these events, the price of $249.99 was announced for the USA. The price was being set in Europe by retailers, which in the UK ended up being around £229.99. The price seemed high, but Nintendo fans were intrigued by the newest handheld, and the launch date was nearly upon them. The 3DS launched on the 26th of February 2011 in Japan, with releases in Europe and the US following on the 25th and 27th of March 2011. The console initially came in two colour schemes, Aqua Blue and Cosmo Black. The launch lineup of games in the UK featured 15 titles. Nintendo's first-party releases were Slim, Pilot Wings Resort, and Nintendogs and Cats, which came in three different versions: Golden Retriever, French Bulldog, and Toy Poodle. Third-party titles made up the rest of the launch lineup and included Super Street Fighter 4 3D Edition, The Sims 3, Pro Evolution Soccer 2011 3D, Lego Star Wars 3 The Clone Wars, Ridge Racer 3D, Super Monkey Ball 3D, Samurai Warriors Chronicles, Asphalt 3D, Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Shadow Wars, Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell 3D, and finally, Rayman 3D. As you can tell from the list, the console didn't have the best launch lineup in history. Street Fighter 4 and Pilot Wings were probably the best standout titles from a mediocre bunch. Despite the lack of quality games, the console initially seemed to be off to quite a healthy start on the market. The 3DS sold 3.61 million units in the first month, making it the fastest selling Nintendo handheld console ever at the time. But financial issues would soon become a problem for the Japanese company. The next financial quarter was a disaster for Nintendo and the 3DS. The handheld was well behind its initial sales target. Fans were complaining of the lack of quality software, and the industry was beginning to bite back about the large price tag of the system. So let's dive a little deeper. Why did 3DS get off to such a poor start? Was this console doomed to repeat the failures of Nintendo's previous attempts at 3D? Or could the situation be turned around? First of all, as I mentioned, was the price. Outside of the core Nintendo fanbase, people weren't willing to spend the $249.99 on the system. Handhelds had traditionally been seen as the cheaper and casual option for consumers, often purchased for children to play on trips or as a first step into gaming, sometimes as a secondary product for core gamers to go alongside their preferred home system. And the pricing of the 3DS was close to touching those home consoles' retailing price at the time. The sales numbers of Nintendo's latest handheld were starting to show the consequences of this launch price mistake. Another obstacle was the system having competition from the world of smartphones, something that the Game Boy or DS lines didn't have to come up against in the same way. Nintendo would eventually end up developing mobile titles itself, but thankfully as of recording, traditional games still seem to be their priority. Nevertheless, the 3DS's growth potential was being eaten into by the surge of cheap mobile and tablet games available at the time. The system had some other problems too. It launched with no eShop and without a proper online presence, a slap in the face for fans who had forked out the cash, and another reason for the gun-shy consumers not to pull the trigger and buy a console that wasn't fully functioned as intended. We touched on the launch titles not being up to par already, but it must be underlined how serious of an issue this was. Fans who had bought in were left stranded with few quality games to play, and those potential customers looking on from the outside had no intentions on joining them in buying the glasses-free 3D dust collector. Launching with just 2 first-party titles in Pilot Wings and Nintendogs was a massive mistake. Sorry Nintendogs, but you're just not quite Mario or Zelda. The final problem I had with the system was the backwards thinking region locking. Thankfully something Nintendo has done away with on the Switch. But for a fully portable console like the 3DS to not be able to play games from other regions when people are travelling or on holidays, well, it's just absolutely stupid. Despite the rocky ground Nintendo found themselves on, there was still hope. A plan to claw back fans and make their latest attempt at 3D a success, not doomed to follow the fate of the Virtual Boy. 29th of July 2011, just 4 months after the launch of the 3DS, and enter Mr. Iwata, a beloved leader and self-proclaimed gamer from Nintendo. He had helmed the company through the good times of the Wii, and now he was wading through the rough stormy seas that the 3DS found itself drowning in. But Iwata wasn't about to let the 3DS fail without a fight. Firstly, and very nobly, Iwata took a 50% pay cut in his salary, and this decision was followed by other higher-ups at Nintendo, with cuts coming in from the range of 20 to 50%. The 3DS was about to get a cut of its own, a much-needed price cut, bringing the console to a more manageable $169.99 in the United States, and £179.99 in the UK. For those that had originally purchased the console at full price, it was unfortunate, but Nintendo didn't let them lose out completely, as it created the Ambassador program. The program would give the systems purchased before the price cut access to 10 Game Boy Advance games and 10 NES titles. As well as this, you got a nice little certificate for your troubles to proudly display on your 3DS homepage. Iwata wrote at the time, stating, "We decided that if we take brave measures now, there's high likelihood that many players can enjoy the Nintendo 3DS in the future." He went on to describe how laying off staff rather than cutting prices could affect game development and quality, something he wanted to avoid. He said, "If we reduce the number of employees for better short-term financial results, employees' morale will decrease. I sincerely doubt employees who fear they may be laid off will be able to develop the software titles that could impress people around the world." Iwata's leadership in taking a pay cut and not letting go of staff, as well as appeasing customers with either a price cut or the Ambassador program, was a bold move, but one that would see the stormy tides begin to calm. Nintendo was hopeful their latest 3D attempt could still be a success, but a console without games is worthless, and in June 2011, just before the handheld's price reduction, Nintendo had released The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time 3D to massive critical success. Advertising campaigns featuring the late Robin Williams and his daughter, who was also named after the title character, gave the necessary marketing push. The combination of a reduced system price and having a stellar Zelda title available for the upcoming holiday season would start to make things right. The eShop was also up and running by this time, giving more utility to the little portable, and Nintendo's fight to save the 3DS wasn't finished there. More great titles were soon to follow. Star Fox 64 3D released in September 2011. It was a remake of the classic N64 game, and the Christmas season was just about to get even better. Nintendo were bringing out the big guns. Super Mario 3D Land released in November 2011. Previously the realm of their home consoles, this was the first exclusive 3D Mario to ever appear on a handheld. Mario Kart 7 also snuck in before Christmas, releasing in December 2011. Mario Kart is always a big seller for Nintendo, and this one went on to achieve a whopping 18.94 million units sold. Into the New Year and Resident Evil Revelations was released in February 2012, followed up by Metal Gear Solid 3D, also in February 2012. And Kid Icarus Uprising, again first showing off at the 3DS announcement during E3, released in March 2012. It had been a crazy up and down year for the company, its shareholders, and its fans. But after 12 months on the market, the 3DS had finally found its footing. The next part of this retrospective will be broken into different sections, taking an overlook at each topic. If you've made it this far and you love the 3DS, please press that like button and consider subscribing or leaving a comment. It'll really help the channel in the future and enable me to make more stuff like this video. Thank you. But enough of that, let's get back to the 3DS. First up, let's look at the console's revisions over the years. There was the first original 3DS that we have discussed already, but Nintendo had plans for many other 3DS variants. The 3DS XL, or LL as it was known in Japan, released on the 28th of the 7th, 2012 in the United Kingdom and the 19th of the 8th, 2012 in the United States. The launch price was £179.99 and $199.99 in the USA. The screen was 90% bigger, battery life was 86% longer, and the console released on the same day as Super Mario Bros. 2 in the USA, helping to fuel sales. 2DS was released on the 12th of the 10th, 2013 in the United Kingdom, Japan, and USA for $129.99 or £109.99. This console was aesthetically very strange. It looked like a wedge of cheese, but it was popular with young gamers due to its price, the removal of the 3D, and the lack of a hinge that could easily break on other models. The console would eventually go as low as $80 in the US, and was the best bargain in gaming at one point, allowing you to access the full 3DS library of titles at a very low entry point. The console had one single screen, with the shell of the system making it look like it split into two separate screens, both upper and lower. Curiously, the system obviously couldn't display 3D images, but it still had the dual camera setup of the original 3DS and 3DS XL. This allowed the 2DS to take 3D photographs. The new 3DS XL released on the 13th of the 2nd, 2015 in the UK and USA, and in Japan it had released on the 11th of the 10th, 2015. Its smaller counterpart, the new 3DS, released on the same day in the UK and Japan. However, America got the console much later, on the 25th of the 9th, 2015. This new line of systems were a big upgrade, and personally, these are my favourite versions of the 3DS family. They featured a faster processor, and had exclusive games that could only run on the new hardware. The new version games were few in number, though Xenoblade Chronicles, Fire Emblem Warriors, Runbow Pocket, and a 3DS version of Minecraft were the titles that got physical releases, and would be exclusive to the new 3DS line, sporting fancy black cases. In terms of downloadable titles, SNES games would become available on the eShop, and would only run on these new model consoles. As well as the exclusive games, the new 3DS also gave performance boosts and additional features to several older 3DS titles, if played on these new version consoles. The smaller of the two models had interchangeable faceplates that came in many different materials: plastic, wooden, felt, and corkboard designs to name a few. The designs often included Nintendo characters or history, like this really nice Hanafuda art style version, referencing Nintendo's playing card past. An NFC reader was now included behind the touchscreen, meaning Amiibo could be used without any additional peripherals. ZL and ZR shoulder buttons had also been added, as well as the C-Stick. This C-Stick basically acted as a second joystick, and defeated the need for the Circle Pad Pro add-on that we will discuss in the Peripherals section of this video. The biggest new feature for these systems was the improved 3D eye tracking. The 3D seemed to work far better than the original models, and you could now move your head around and not get the blurred effect caused by the small 3D sweet spot on the original handheld. New 2DS XL was the final iteration of the Nintendo 3DS line of systems, and released worldwide over June and July 2017. It was similar in performance to the new 3DS XL models, featuring a faster processor, but again leaving out the 3D element much like the prior 2DS. The extra buttons and C-stick were also present. The system sported a sleek design with a smartphone-like look to the top screen. Across the years, Nintendo produced many different special edition versions of the 3DS systems. Let's take a look at some of them, from the original 3DS right through to the new 2DS XL. Internal software available on the 3DS expanded and changed over time. The basic features and software included the following: the home menu, which could show up to 60 icons, game memos to take notes, notifications to receive updates, the friends list to finally be able to add friends to a console, something Nintendo had struggled with previously. Mii Maker allowed you to design or auto-generate Mii characters on the go. And finally, Nintendo Sound, a strange audio mixing tool. The 3DS software included a few built-in games that really helped show off the new features of the handheld. AR games would allow you to play in augmented reality. One such title had you lay the console's included AR card down. Whatever surface you'd place the card onto would transform into a target practice game that allowed you to shoot bows and arrows in 3D visuals. There were also AR character cards. Not so much a game, but these allowed you to take real-world pictures with your favourite Nintendo characters or your created Mii. My personal favourite game software that came on every system was Face Raiders, a game that allowed you to use the 3DS camera to shoot down enemies in the real world, and the enemies would have faces of family or friends that you'd taken pictures of. Classic Nintendo levels of fun and ingenuity from this one. Streetpass was included in the built-in software lineup. This was something that could be expanded over time and include more games, purchased as DLC. But in the beginning, it consisted of Mii Plaza, a place where you would meet people you'd passed in the real world on your 3DS. This would happen while your console was in sleep mode. When you arrived at your destination, upon awaking the console, if your green LED light was flashing, you'd be greeted by a fellow 3DS gamer you'd passed on your travels. Streetpass games used the characters you'd meet from these real-world encounters. Such as in Puzzle Swap, it would allow you to unlock pieces for 3D Nintendo-themed dioramas. Streetpass Quest was an RPG-like game, where people you met on your travels would help you battle foes inside the game. And if you were lucky enough to pass that person again on Streetpass, they became a more powerful version to use in battle. Many a time in my London commutes, I would end up with a stack of 3DS regulars, ready to fight the good fight. The eShop launched on the 6th of June 2011, after not being available at launch. It was a revolution for Nintendo handhelds. This was the first console that seemed to be in line with their home console counterparts, giving online quality of life and a store, 3DS titles, DSiWare games, virtual console games, 3D classics, which were remakes of older titles with a 3D makeover, 3D trailers, videos, apps, DLC, and game demos could all be downloaded. Several video applications became available on the eShop, but would all eventually be discontinued. The services included Netflix, YouTube, Hulu+, Eurosport, and Nintendo Video. Some of these services took advantage of the 3D screen, and would allow you to watch videos in the third dimension. The 3DS had many different peripherals that spanned across all of its various iterations. Here are a few of the ones that stand out. The CirclePad Pro and CirclePad Pro XL added extra triggers, a second CirclePad, and made the console more comfortable in hand, albeit also transforming the system into a ridiculous bulky size. Kid Icarus Uprising was a great game, but the control scheme and use of the touchpad took some getting used to. That's why Nintendo bundled the game with this handy 3DS stand on its release, which allowed more ease of use when controlling via the touchscreen. Various charging cradles were available for the 3DS. There was the original model that came packed in with every system. The 3DS XL and new line of systems would also get their own versions of the charging cradle. Some of these were exclusive to Club Nintendo in Japan. Pokemon Tetralab for 3DS is an attachment and software bundle, developed by Japanese toy company Takara Tomy Arts and the game developer Marvelous AQL. It allowed players to load data of captured Pokemon from the arcade game Pokemon Tetra. The NFC reader allowed for amiibo use with models prior to the new 3DS lineup. It somewhat resembled a white hockey puck and allowed for scanning your favourite plastic Nintendo friends into your 3DS. The most insane add-on was Bandai Namco's Bakachu Bar Hunter. This add-on came in the form of a gigantic blue and black fishing controller. Definitely one of the stranger things available for the 3DS. As always, piracy was a major issue for Nintendo's 3DS system. The DS had been plagued by the use of ROMs, stored on R4 flashcards, that allowed users to easily get any title they wanted for free, and these R4 cards were still available to be used on the 3DS to play original DS games. But for 3DS titles, hackers and modders would have to get creative, and that's how Cubic Ninja became one of the most expensive games on the 3DS secondary market. This title had a feature that allowed you to upload your own levels. This was then manipulated and used as a backdoor to get in and mod the console, and from that moment onwards, the piracy community for the 3DS was up and running. More modern methods have come along since, using Bootstrap 9, Luma 3DS, and the Eshop. These would allow you to download and play any 3DS or eShop title with relative ease. Morally, is this the correct thing to do? Well, I'll leave that up to each individual, but we'll be chatting more about the impact piracy has had in prolonging the 3DS's life near the end of this video. When looking over the history of a console, it's always interesting to see its total sales numbers, both of software and hardware. The 3DS had overall console sale numbers of 75.94 million units worldwide, and 3DS software totaled 388.89 million units of sales. Of the games released on the system, 59 titles went on to sell 1 million or more copies. Let's take a look at the top 10 list. Coming in at number 10 was Yokai Watch 2, which sold 7.3 million units. Pokemon would have its first entry in the top 10 list with Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, combining together to reach a sales total of 9.15 million. Super Smash Bros. For the 3DS was the first Smash Bros. Handheld title, and it comes in at number 8 with 9.64 million units. Number 7 sees Super Mario 3D Land achieving sales of 12.87 million. Animal Crossing New Leaf comes in at number 6 with 13.04 million units. Number 5, New Super Mario Bros. 2 with 13.41 million units sold. The top 4 is dominated by Pokemon titles. In at number 4, Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, achieving 14.57 million units of sales. Number 3 sees Pokemon Sun and Moon, achieving 16.3 million. And number 2 has Pokemon X and Y, with a combined total of 16.68 million. But the highest selling piece of software for the 3DS was Mario Kart 7, achieving 18.98 million units of sales. Other notable titles include the Louvre Guide. This was a piece of software used to guide you around the world-famous museum in France. The software was only available to buy physically on location at the museum, and has seen it become somewhat of a collector's item. Interestingly, this was the only piece of 3DS software that wasn't region-locked. A trio of excellent Zelda games also graced the system. Grezzo Studios done a fine job on the 3D remasters of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. The third Zelda title sees a spiritual sequel to the beloved Link to the Past, with Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds. Luigi's Mansion, a series that had been dormant since the GameCube, received a 3DS sequel, as well as a 3D version of the original title. There are so many other games on the 3DS systems, from Fire Emblem Awakening to Fantasy Life. There are plenty of brilliant titles to check out. The Nintendo Switch launched in March 2017, with the smash hit Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild as a launch title. Despite Nintendo insisting the new home and portable hybrid system did not mean that the 3DS was coming to an end, everyone could see the writing on the wall. The 3DS stumbled on for several more years, despite software and hardware sales taking an enormous plummet. The 3DS was seemingly laid to rest in 2020 when the production of new units ceased from Nintendo. In its last few years, titles like Persona Q2, New Cinema Labyrinth, and Kirby's Extra Epic Yarn had been released. Several games have since jockeyed to be the last physical game release on the 3DS. Limited Run produced the Atui collection, and have recently released the eShop favourite Go-Go Coca-Polo. Androdunos 2 also released physically on the system, and Limited Run have hinted that they may have one last 3DS title to come. Despite these final games, the Switch had taken over, and the 3DS's time in the sun was finished. Or was it? The eShop closed on the 27th of March 2023 and resulted in the loss of being able to legally purchase hundreds of games that were only available on 3DS systems. Although this was a sad time for fans of the console and seemed like it would signify the very end, it strangely gave 3DS a shot in the arm and one last chance to breathe new life. Many owners turned their 3DS on for the first time in years to snap up titles they were missing before the eShop's closure. It also gave a boost to the sales of consoles and physical games on the second-hand market, and although that has pushed the price of 3DS games and hardware to a new sky-high limit, it was nice to see the console have one last shot at being appreciated and loved. As I mentioned previously, the 3DS has become a breeze to mod. This helped to breathe some extra new life into the system, with many people choosing to go this route when Nintendo closed the eShop, and I'm sure this will keep people discovering the 3DS library well into the future. Gamers wanted to try the glasses-free 3D system all over again, or some for the first time. It was a beautiful end to a wonderful system. So my final thoughts on the 3DS. What a handheld. Without a doubt, this is one of my favourite Nintendo consoles of all time. It may not have been a top seller, it might have got off to a rocky start, but the 3DS has a solid library of top titles. A unique series of console iterations with built-in 3D and augmented reality. The UI of the system had a wonderful personality, from different music to changeable themes, down to making folders and adding sprites all over your home screen. It was amazing. The system may be the last of Nintendo's dedicated handheld-only consoles, but this was an excellent way for them to bow out. We salute you, 3DS. If you liked the video or found it interesting, please consider subscribing to the channel for more content. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.